up, you dirtbags? We are back in studio with a gigantic episode. Mr. Luke Payne, how we doing, man? Cheers.
Good, brother. Happy, it would be Thursday today. Happy Thursday. Cheers to you. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, man. A lot of big things going on, and this is an episode we've been waiting for, patiently waiting, but I feel like this is the perfect time. Most people by now know who he is. So we're going to bring into studio Mr. Canadian Septic, James Stixma. How's it going, man?
Good, Luke. Thanks for having me on. It's exciting to be a part of the podcast. Been sitting on the sidelines, listening patiently, hearing my name a couple times, and finally get to be part of the show.
About fucking time you get on the show, right? Jeez.
Yeah, I feel like we talk about you more than anyone. So I was like, man, I feel like next guest has got to be James.
Oh, there you go. Right on. I think Dervin's given me a run for my money lately, so.
Oh, yeah.
Man.
Did you hear the one with Doug about the kids?
Yeah, well, I think I joked with you at one point too, because I mean, I've got four, but those who can't reproduce. So I've got four that maybe one day they'll want to work in the business. Right now, they all say they do, but we'll see. We're the oldest one's only 16 now, so we'll see what they want to do with their lives.
Yeah, so I just want to start there. I mean, 16, James. When I first met you in BC, I thought I was older than you. I heard you had a 16-year-old. I was like, okay, I'm either not great at math or I'm way off here. So, dude, great haircut, but you look a lot younger than you actually are.
You do.
And I mean that as a compliment.
Yeah, thanks. I get that quite often, but yeah, no, I think I'm turning 38 next month here, so in the next couple days. So I just got started young, married to my high school sweetheart. We've got 4 kids. We got married just after I turned 20, and I think we had our first child at 22. So yeah, we just got started a little bit earlier than most folks are used to these days. But yeah, absolutely loving every minute of it. Getting to go out to the softball fields, going out to the hockey rinks, helping out with all that stuff. But I don't know how some folks get started a little bit later in life, because I don't know where they find the energy for it. I'm only 38 and I'm just exhausted by all of it. So
I'll tell you what, I don't think from the guy's standpoint that they ever lose their drive, but maybe the women do.
There you go. Exactly.
To keep it PG, but I think every guy can relate to that. But anyway, okay, James, one of my questions, did you go to college at all? Did you like high school, college?
Yeah, so I did take some courses to start towards my business administration degree. I got about a year's worth of courses under the belt, but you know, getting started as young as we did, I was doing a lot of work, and work started taking over for schooling. And so, you know, I've always had a business mindset or interest in it, but yeah, no, we got started pretty early on that, but didn't follow through too far. Just got more experience, life experience, rather than the college education.
Fucking right. Good for you, bud.
Yeah.
Let me bring my inner Canadian out here.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm doing some quick math in my head. So 20 when you had kids, you know, obviously 22. You married your high school sweetheart when you were 20. Looks like you established Canadian Septic in 2016. Is that correct?
Yep.
So
absolutely.
Luke was telling me a little bit about that, but did you work for somebody for a couple of years? Like, tell us kind of your background that way.
Yeah. So coming out of high school, I worked at a wrestling mat manufacturing company out of Chilliwack, BC.
Luke and I
in the back.
Wrestled. I don't mean to cut you off.
No.
Yeah.
No. It's something you Americans love about wrestling with other sweaty dudes in tights that made the business go for a while, but
absolutely kept the lights on, baby.
Made some trips down into Idaho and Washington, did a bunch of deliveries, but didn't work too long in the back before they moved me out front, doing some of the sales and shipping. From there, went and worked in the family greenhouse for a couple of years. Did some of the smaller sales and shipping as well. After that, I went and worked for my first Fortune 500 company, which was Cintas. I was out running route. I don't know if that's the American or Canadian pronunciation, but I was out running route on an industrial park for about 3 years. And after that, I went to go work at a wireless dealer. So I was dealing with business owners in the B2B space, doing taking care of their cell phones, GPS tracking, working together with them on some application style solutions. So, how do you get more jobs done? How do you make more money using not just, hey, here's a cell phone, but hey, have you ever tried using it this way? Have you used it with this application? Can we, make your business more efficient through the use of the technologies that are available?
Fuck yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a pretty extensive job experience.
A lot of construction in there too. So
yeah, so much.
A lot of septic. So I mean, so then fast forward to like, how did you get into the septic industry? Because I kind of know, but I think your story is fascinating because it's not the typical experience that most people have. And so how'd you get into Canadian Septic, and how'd you start it, if you did?
Yeah. So essentially what happened was the commissions in the wireless world continuing to get cut back. It was and still is a bit of a race to zero amongst the wireless carriers. So I could tell that my time there was going to be coming to an end shortly with 4 kids and everything else that we got going on. This wasn't going to be sustainable for the long term. And so I started doing some job searching, went to a couple headhunters, and I kept getting put in touch with garbage companies to sell garbage. Nothing wrong with that, but those were all also high pressure Fortune 500 style companies where if anybody's ever worked sales for one of those companies, it's very much a what have you done for me lately. So there's not as much security when you start working for those guys. And in that particular industry, it's a very long sales cycle with, contracts that are 3 to 5 years. So you can go out and meet a bunch of people and then you're going to have to sit on it for a while. So eventually I decided I was going to look for a business to purchase and take over and start to run to make it my own. And during that process, I stumbled across a business business owner. He was set up as a sole proprietor, but he was looking to move his business because he was looking to get more into what I was doing, which was a sales role in a distributor type. He's basically moving into a facilitator role. And he had told the folks that he was working with that the only way he would sell is or jump on with them is if he was able to sell his business. So he sort of checked a bunch of the boxes I was looking for when I went to look at different businesses. I was looking for something that had a bit of a barrier to entry. So something that's going to stop, others from just jumping into it. And again, having this whole thing turn into a giant race to zero. So, the fact that septic systems in British Columbia have some level of regulation around them, that there's some benefits to being certified. It sort of checked off a bunch of boxes and went through a whole, I want to call a couple weeks worth of due diligence back and forth, going over some questions, not that different from what I was doing with the current sales folks that I was working with, or the business owners rather, trying to understand their processes, understand why they're doing what they're doing, find out if they'd thought of doing it different ways, and then just, getting through all of that to try and understand why they're doing what they're doing. So once we went through all of that, did some negotiating, came to an agreement. We decided to remortgage the house to purchase the company, and off we went.
How was taking that step? Because I'm thinking of having 4 kids. I was a nervous wreck when I had 1 and I had owned the business, so I just, tell us a little bit more of the acquisition itself. Right. That's wild.
It was an interesting process. And again, I certainly had some experience with these types of conversations and having these conversations about, how business comes up with their profit, how they're going to make money, how we can streamline some stuff. So, I found it on a website that was just basically business listings in British Columbia. And I think I wrote, I'd have to go back, but I probably had 2 pages of questions, like Word doc, 10 font, like double-sided, like, here's my questions. And he even said to me at the time, he's like, oh, I was really excited. I was impressed that you had all these questions. And then I sent him a second set. I don't know if he was as impressed at that point, but
A little annoyed.
But there's no guarantees in life, right? But I felt like I had as much information as I could possibly get before going in. And the other part of it too, like we went through some of my work history before. When I was at Cintas, I was running route, and you're a glorified laundry boy. Like there's work, right? Like you're not just talking to people, schmoozing and doing whatever. Like you're hoofing laundry up 2 flights of stairs. The clean stuff, that's the fun part. Then you got to take the dirty stuff down, but the training and everything that goes along with that. I mean, I wasn't afraid of work, but part of the process when we went through the acquisitions was, I took a week off of work and said, I'm going to shadow this guy for a week to make sure I haven't lost my ever-loving mind. Like, can I do this? Like, am I crazy? And, went for a week with the guy, saw how many voicemails he had sitting on his phone Monday morning that hadn't been answered, saw some of the efficiencies that could have been put in place. And we've tried to as much as we can since then. But yeah, that's basically the process. And the other part was, with all those questions, was trying to figure out, okay, what's real and what's not, especially as a sole proprietor, trying to go through the accounting and figure out, okay, what's real, what's not, what do you need, what do you not need? Part of a perfect example, going through the process, one of the things that I was able to figure out through it was, this individual had exclusive rights with a certain treatment plant. He could import them himself, and he was essentially making an extra $2,500 to $3,000 per install because he was buying them essentially at distributor cost pricing. I was not going to be getting those rights when I went to purchase the business. So looked at that one. Okay, you sold 10 of them. So you're saying there's an extra 20 to 30 grand a year that you're making because you have distributor rights. I'm not getting those. I'm taking that off of what you think your business is worth. And so it's just asking the questions and, not being afraid to sound stupid. And that's sort of been my motto since day one, because, I kept my head down for my first 2 years, not suggesting that I know anything at all. Don't make yourself sound stupid, just observe and go from there.
James, I want to jump in. I have a few questions, but I'd say the first one I want to touch on, and I love that you brought it up, is efficiencies in business. So you looked at a business and looked at their profits, but you also saw that opportunities for efficiencies. So do you still have that mindset as you've been in this business for 7 years, or has that dulled or even sharpened your business acumen?
Yeah, I'd say we're still always looking for efficiencies. I mean, it's not lost on me, the challenge with recruiting individuals. One of the things that we've recently invested in is the TopCon LN150 and MC Mobile, which is essentially a product that allows the operator to see where he is in relation to the plan and whether or not his bucket's deep enough. So we've essentially eliminated the need for a grade man on any project moving forward, because you can see it all from the cab of the machine. And that's why we've now purchased a service van, so that there's going to be days on a septic install where I don't really need 2 guys standing there. And so now he's got the van, so he's able to go do some service calls that we would regularly just turn away or hand off to someone else because we don't have the time to do it. So we're always looking for efficiencies. I mean, some of the other things that we've done is going to mobile forms. So when we go do a service, all the photos, all the reports, everything gets documented on a tablet, gets emailed to the customer so that they've got all the information they need, and it eliminates a lot of the need for some of the paperwork or bringing stuff back. And again, I think it's in large part just because I come from a different background and I've got a bit of a different perspective or outlook. Not saying it's right, but it works for us. Yeah.
And this is kind of a loaded question, but like, I just think it's so fascinating how, you purchase this business. So like, if you were to go back, would you do that again? Or would you start from
Start your own.
scratch like most people do. I guess I'm just curious on that.
I'm in a bit of a unique situation. There's definitely pluses and minuses to both approaches. I would do it again in a heartbeat, and in large part, it's due to the fact that I was a sales guy. I didn't know anything about the dirt world. I didn't know anything about how to do septic systems. And in buying it, I had a mentor who was able to provide some guidance on how to start. And he had a very solid lead generating tool in his website, which leads would come in. And, you know, as a sales guy, I don't feel ever that I have an issue closing deals, but, you know, to have the time to go out there and get them, that was a large part of it. And the reason I'm so confident saying I do it again is just the fact that one of the things that I got along with it was the phone number. You know, if anybody's buying a business, get the phone number. I've talked to some other guys that have bought businesses, and they did not insist on getting the business owner's cell number. And I mean, you're, as much as you want to trust the guy that you're buying from, if you don't have and own everything from that business, especially as a sole proprietor, you can run into some issues. And I mean, this company's not around anymore that did do that. But the fact that I had his phone number turned into a lot of work, specifically with some of the pipeline stuff that we've been doing. They had his phone number from doing some locate work, and it's proven very, very useful for us and very profitable from that standpoint. So I do it again from the mentorship, as well as, you know, there's business coming in. It's a little bit easier to hit the ground running when there's something coming in the door.
What was your driver, right? Were you just looking for like any business at the time? And were you like, I'm just looking for something to stick. I want something that I can build. And this one just kind of checked all the boxes. You know, what was, because like you said, you were looking at a website on businesses for sale.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, there was a couple criteria, right? Like I wanted something that we could potentially grow. I know I remember even saying to the guy that I bought the business off of that, you know, at some point, if my kids wanted a job, I wanted something that they could go to and do. And, you know, having spent more time in the industry now than even back then, there's so much space in the trades world that you can make good money. Like, I mean, for the people that used to look down on not going to college and everything that goes along with that, I mean, we're at a point where everyone was told for years and years and years, go to school, go to school, go to school. Well, now everybody's got a piece of paper that cost them 80 to 100 grand to get, and so does everybody else. So you've got a bunch of folks now who have some level of skill that can go out there and do something that I don't think AI or any of the technology is going to be able to replace anytime soon. They're certainly going to be able to assist, like I said, with some of the stuff that we've invested in for our business. But you're not going to be able to replace that. And it's being able to keep people out of the industry as far as the barrier to entry. I don't want anybody who just walks in with a machine to be able to do what we're doing, or just make it more difficult. That was the main thing for me, and find something that I could grow out.
Hell yeah. Was it called Canadian Septic when you bought it, or did you rebrand?
We did do a rebrand. We did realize afterwards. So initially it was called Septic Expert. And we found out within the first 6 months to a year that brand didn't have the best of reputations. And just to help clarify some of the issues, we did have some phone calls come in from folks that were looking for some warranty work or this, that, and the next thing. And to the previous owner's credit, he stood behind everything he did and said he would. One of the things I did in my negotiations was said, any warranty work, like you're a sole proprietor, that's you. Like I'm not taking on any of that. Yeah. And he agreed to it. And so we decided to change the name at that time. When I went to incorporate, they wouldn't even let me incorporate the name Septic Expert. They said it was too generic. Apparently Canadian Septic wasn't, but yeah, right. So that's what we started rolling with after, like I said, I think about 6 to 12 months. That's when we started calling ourselves Canadian Septic.
Hell yeah.
Dude. And you swipe the domain CanadianSeptic.com, which I mean,
NCA. And yeah, I mean, I swiped those septic license plates too. Nobody had that. So
yeah, dude, I mean, that's I love the perspective you bring to this industry and to septic. And it's obviously Luke and I are big on the industry as well. And we just love most things about it. And so
all things, we love all things about it. Good and bad.
Sorry, I don't want to sound like too fruity there, but James, I got to meet you it would be a few months ago now up in what I now call Nanaimo. Originally thought it was Nanaimo. So
I remember when we were talking that on a podcast, Luke, and I'm pretty sure you said Nemo on the first time.
I didn't. I'll have to look back, but I definitely thought it was Nanaimo. And so I get there and, James, you hooked us up big time. I mean, for anyone that, hadn't heard the story, James had talked to the board up in BC for their septic conference, essentially, and had me come in and speak at their conference. And so it was an incredible opportunity. It was on Vancouver Island, and really got to meet you and hang out with everyone there. And so that was an absolute blast. But then, at Con Expo, we got to get together again, have some beers. Because Luke, that was the night we were at that
casino.
The casino, and you lost some money in blackjack, I think so.
One in blackjack. I lost on the fucking slots.
Oh, the slots, yeah.
They took me for a ride that night.
Oh, shoot. That's why I stay away from any gambling. The machines are programmed to win 97, 99% of the time. Why would I try my odds at that?
Because it's fun. There's that chance.
I think Luke and I are still trying to figure out why we do that as well. But that's another podcast. So James, I have another question too of, you, when you purchase a business and you look for these criteria, I feel like it also gives you that opportunity to one day sell the business. And I tell everyone this, I say, always build your business as if you were to sell it, even if you have no care to ever sell it. And so it's like, I want to keep it in the family. No problem. Build it as if you were to sell it. And so I'm curious to hear your take on that, what you think about it, and if that's crossed your mind ever.
Yeah, no, it's definitely front of mind at some point. That should be everyone's goal. I mean, if you're dumping your money into your business instead of a 401k, or that's sort of your retirement plan, is to sell off your business, whether it's to your kids or to someone else down the road. One of the reasons we're trying to focus on some of our maintenance and repair side of things is, some of that's repeatable. And if I want to get onto some service contracts or agreements with some customers, the way that someone's going to view the value of a company when you've got some recurring revenue that's coming on a regular basis, I mean, you're going to get a higher multiplier on that part of it versus, the business that I ended up acquiring. I think I was probably about a 1-to-1, maybe even a little less than 1-to-1 when you talk about
is that on the
business
net?
Based, whatever he made in a year was what the value of the business was, which again, I can't argue with that. And I would venture a guess at this point that mine's probably not much different. We haven't made the headway that we need to yet to build that value up. But that's part of the goal, is to make sure that people understand who Canadian Septic is, and it's my job to make sure that it becomes more than just myself and Arian, or how do we build it up so that, yes, I can still be out in front of it, but that there's something for someone else to buy. I mean, I looked at one point at a pump truck company to add to the portfolio, say, okay, we're going to offer this service now. And the way it was set up, it didn't make sense. If I was buying a business that had had employees and assets, it made sense. But the way that this one had worked, it was not going to make sense for us. So that's a large part of it.
Yeah. So what are ways that a business can put some systems in place right now that would increase that multiple, instead of just a liquidation, like, yeah, you buy my assets of machines and trucks and that's it. Like, how can you increase that multiple to where there's a lot more value, like contracts and other things?
Yeah. So for us, I mean, any septic system that's has been put in since 2005 should have come along with a maintenance plan and a maintenance schedule. Nobody's checking in on it from the province to say, is anyone actually doing this or not? But if you can get customers on board and start getting them onto a contract that says, okay, we're going to come every year, every 6 months, whatever it is, to do maintenance on your system, which is more than just pumping out your septic system, especially when we get into the higher treatment levels with blowers and ultraviolet bulbs and everything else that goes along with that. If I can show somebody that there's recurring revenues and it's consistent, and I've got the employees there that are willing to, stay on if someone ever does decide to sell a business, and I certainly have no plans anytime in the near future to do that, but that's where the value is for someone else stepping in, going, okay, well, I can just put the money into this and it's going to generate revenue for me, and I'm going to make money by doing that. That's how you create the value. So not that different than what you're doing, Luke, with Fraser. The fact that you've now got somebody running the business for you from the day-to-day stuff. If you can offer that to someone where there's the systems and the people in place to just continue to print the money, create the revenue, that's a value. When it's just a single operator that's doing all his own quotes and is essentially everything to the business, that's not of much value to someone. Because I know I even had somebody approach me, I want to say 2 years ago, asking if I was willing to sell. I said, well, you're not going to value it at what I think it is, and rightfully so. But it's all part of it.
Yeah, I always say everything is always for sale, but
100%.
A lot of times it's not going to make sense if you look at a business valuation or how you should value a business. So I've had a lot of people ask me, like, would I ever sell Fraser? I'd say absolutely, like as long as the numbers would make sense. But if somebody came to me today and said, I would like to buy Fraser, I will give you, usually it's like a 4x multiple. Sure. And I would say, like, I'm not ready, I'm not going to sell. But if they said we would give you a 12x multiple because of XYZ, I'd be like, sure. Like, or I'd talk with, the boss about it. But
totally.
Yeah. But Luke, I'm curious, from your perspective, more on the dirt side, because I think septic is an interesting, it seems like there's more opportunity for recurring maintenance. Do you have have you seen some of that recurring revenue come into play, like on the dirt side?
No, because there's, from the work that we do, we don't have any maintenance schedules that can create reoccurring revenue. We do have our name and our relationships, and that's what creates our reoccurring revenue. And that, honestly, the best way, if Cole and I were to ever sell Western, right? Essentially, Cole and I have to take ourselves out of the equation and let our employees create those relationships with a lot of our general contractors. Right. So people looking out can see, like, oh, hey, it's not the business owners that have that. There's the employees that work within the business that know everything about it. They probably know more than the employers do. The people that own the business, that's what makes it super valuable.
Yeah. And Luke, I think to your point too, it's like, it's the employees, but it's like the systems that the employees are working in. And so like, as you and Cole are building that out, the image, the brand, the systems of like how we do things and why we do them, you'll be able to plug in more employees, fewer employees, like however you do that and however you scale it. But you're kind of at the point of like necessity, like you and Cole can't run everything because you guys are just too big to do that.
It doesn't even have to go to being too big, right? It becomes more of like the efficiencies, like we had talked about. For sure. Right. It doesn't matter your size as long as you have everything in place to where it makes sense for people. And it helps everybody's workload, right? It doesn't matter if it's the owner, the operations manager, say the owner's doing everything. Okay. Well, those people within the business aren't acting, they don't have responsibility. Why would they stay? Okay. Then reverse the roles. Okay. Well, everybody, or say the operations manager is doing everything within the business, but the owner's not. right? Then people are looking at the owner like, oh, you fucking pile of shit. You're not doing anything within the business. Yeah. I'm building your business. But I think structure is a really big part of that, to where everybody understands their job duties and they enact really fucking well in those job duties. That's what makes a business excel very fast.
Well, and there's a difference between buying a business and buying a job.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. When you look at what I did when I bought the business, I was buying a job because the guy was the business. And if I were to sell at this point, I would feel like it's at this time, it's the same thing. You're buying a job. So you know what your income is going to be from year to year, but you're going to have to put in the work. When a business gets to the point where the owner can basically go away for a month and nothing changes and everything keeps going the way it's supposed to go, that's when you've got something that's worth, a 4 or 5x multiplier on what your annual revenue or profits are.
James, I would almost go up, and sorry, Luke, if I'm speaking out of turn here, but I would almost go out and say that I think buying a business is harder than starting your own, because you are buying something that somebody else created, to where, like you said, I'm sure there was quite a few things that were hidden, that you don't see, like say with a reputation standpoint, say the guy had a really bad reputation with this one guy, and you buy the business and it comes back on you type thing. And it is now your job to try to mend that, to where if you would have started that yourself, you would have maybe never had that issue, Yep.
Yeah,
That's
no, I mean, for sure. No, there's certainly that part of it. And, we have a fairly small community in our area, the guys that are doing septic on the regular. And so, when people are selling, that somebody's different. And we made, we reached out to a couple folks locally, and that's where I think I learned even more was from some of the older guard that was still doing it, that were very willing to help and sort of point us in the right direction. And ultimately, I mean, that's one of the main reasons why I like being online on Instagram as much as I am, because, I'm trying to educate homeowners. I'm trying to educate myself, watching what other guys are doing. And I like to show others how we're doing things. And maybe there's something that could be done a little better. If I'm going to be quoting out this septic system versus somebody else, and they're not including any topsoil, they're just going to use whatever's there, which they shouldn't be using because it's clay and it's just going to choke everything out. But if everybody's quoting the same thing and everybody's on a level playing field, I got no problem with that. My challenge is when you run into the folks that are just undercutting, the guys who are on Facebook who say they're certified, and I look online and I can't find them anywhere that's got any kind of certification whatsoever. And those guys are a necessary evil, because they do take care of some of the customers that I really don't want. It's maybe a little counterintuitive to some folks, but there are definitely customers that I do not want. I get more of a headache from the ones that are always grinding you and grind you down on price, and then they're the slowest to pay and everything else, where, why work twice as hard, doing twice as much work and probably making less money if I can just say, hey, I'm going to do a better job than everyone else. I'm going to not cut any corners, and you're going to pay for it, but now I don't have to run around in a beat up 1993 pickup truck with crap falling out the back of it. I'm going down the highway because if I don't finish this next job in time, I'm not going to make a payment on my machine or whatever else. And it's a different mindset. It's a different approach. And that's how we like to do it.
Mm-hmm. One thing that I just thought of is learning to say no is probably one of the best things you can learn in business. And it'll skyrocket your business, because most of the time we just want to encompass everybody. No job too small or too big. And I get that, especially when you're starting out, that is totally fine. But at some point you do have to start saying no, because you realize you're putting double the work, you're making half the money, and you're just spinning your wheels. So, Luke and I just talked about this actually on the last podcast, educating yourself and always learning. But also what I think you've done a really great job of is consistency. And we also had Devin Boudreau on Pushing the Standard podcast. He does something very similar to you and vice versa. You guys are both always on Instagram on the stories and just educating others, but you're also educating yourself in that process. So you give an update of what you're doing and why you're doing it, and also like what issues you've run into and how you rectify those issues. So when did you start doing that, and how have you seen that like pull the community together and like really help solve some of your problems?
Yeah, so I would say, I think I started the Instagram account in 2018, and I sort of made a New Year's resolution for myself in 2020 that I was going to try and be more present online. Like I said, when I started, I had very little background in the industry. So for me personally, I kept my head down, shut your mouth, ears open, listen to what's going on around you and try and figure that out. And 2020, I started actually by following a whack of realtors on Instagram because a lot of them need inspections done on properties. And, every so often you get a follow back from them because you followed them and they'll see what you're up to, see what you're doing, and you get phone calls. Now, we didn't actually start doing real estate inspections until recently for regulation reasons. Now we're allowed to do them. We weren't before. But getting online, seeing some of the other guys, our trailer, I got the idea to start doing a trailer that was organized like that after I saw just a quick little clip from Travis Jimel out of Walnut Grove Excavating. He had done something in one of his stories like, oh, I really like that. And I'm still seeing stuff like I think it was Sunday, I was scrolling through some stories, and a guy out of Washington State, I think it's Milton Excavating, he was sleeving his pressure lines off the edge of the tank. And I know it's always been a concern for us to make sure that those sked 40 lines are properly supported around the tanks, especially when you come off the edge. And he sleeved it with a 4-inch SDR just to help with making sure that pipe didn't settle, kink, crack, break. And so that's why I like to be online. Again, doing some of that education for homeowners, for myself, and like I said, for some of the other contractors at sea. I get so many people reach out about the trailer. I can't tell you how many people I've sent schematics of that trailer to. I'm happy to send them to whoever wants them, and just make it your own.
Dude, I think you should start selling it and use
start selling the stuff. Sell the design. Fuck it. I know people that sell their spreadsheets.
There you go.
They make good money off doing that. You put in the time, you put in the work, you might as well.
Yeah. Well, if the design was exactly the same as what I put into my trailer, maybe I would. But
that's true.
It's been tweaked. It's a living, breathing organism, that trailer. So we've made a couple different adjustments to it over the years here.
Yeah, and James, I was telling Luke about that. One of the big reasons that I think people are attracted to, what you're doing is just your education and your knowledge, because you didn't start in the industry, but your consistency, you keep doing it. But then also like you bring a different level of organization and cleanliness to an industry that obviously may not see that with some other companies. And so I know when we were talking to Dervin, even in his branding, he said, yeah, we use blue for Pump That Septic because blue resonates with like clean water and things like that. So I feel like, your equipment, your trailer, your truck is always washed up. It's clean. Everything's black. It's branded very well. And so I think that really helps as well, paint that image for your customer, but also for other contractors to see like, how can you set that standard with your company?
Yeah. I mean, for us, one of the things, going back to an earlier conversation about efficiencies, I mean, one of the things that a lot of people don't understand or are willing to just sort of throw away is the opportunity lost cost. So if I'm on a job site and I don't have the right fitting, or the supplier forgot to send what I need, or what, somebody's got to go run into town to go grab the part. Now, is everybody at a standstill? Is everybody, what all happens now? Does a 3.5 day job turn into a 4 day job? Now is 1 day less that I can go spend somewhere else. And so there's some real costs outside of just the idea of, okay, well, it's extra fuel and it's the guy's hours. Well, no, I lost the opportunity to go spend a different day on someone else's site making more money. So, it's one of the things when, I did my presentation at our association conference that you were at as well, was just helping people understand that there's something beyond just the tangible fuel and hourly cost that comes along with, not being organized or not being clean.
I can relate to that because we've had a lot of instances to where somebody forgets a tool or somebody doesn't have the correct, fitting, whatever it might be. And then they waste, 2 hours trying to find it, get it, come back to the site. And you're like, we could have almost had this done and on to something else. And like you said, that could relate into like a day's worth of, efficiencies and labors and, all of that stuff. Yep. Yeah. And it's something that people don't think about enough, especially on the employee side. I don't want to throw them under the bus, but if they were brought back and maybe shown a lot of that, it would help as well. Cause why would they think, oh, it's 2 hours, not a big deal, take it out of my pay type thing. But it is a lot deeper than those 2 hours,
Totally. And that's why, as we're working on setting up this van, making sure that we've got pumps on the truck. So if I need to do a replacement, I have the pump with me. Mm-hmm. I can swap it out on the spot. I don't have to go run over to the supplier to say, okay, well, I figured out what type of pump it is. Now I need a replacement. No, I've got 4 different sizes of pumps, and it's probably going to cover whatever it is that I run across. And I've got the parts there. So that allows us to get that job done quicker, which means we get to go on to the next job, which we can make more money on, because nobody gets paid to, sit in front of a windshield. Not enough anyways.
Correct. Although I will say, and I don't want to jump out of turn, but UPS is paying drivers 170 grand now.
I saw that.
What?
I saw that, dude.
Yeah.
All right.
170 grand. And I'm like, sign me up.
Yeah, especially like all these business owners listening that feel like they bought themselves a job or they, own a job. It's like, damn, UPS is paying 170. I saw 6 figures, and so I listened to it. I was like, dang, it's not too bad.
Yeah. Which is cool though. I mean, as those people deserve that type of wage. It's
absolutely
not a fun job, but that goes into a whole new rabbit hole of, I'm sure shipping prices are going up, and it's just going to become the new industry standard now. But that's got to relate into contracting too. There's such a shortage of people, and there's such a shortage of contractors. People got to be okay with paying a little bit more if they want to have contractors around, if these contractors are going to sustain people.
Well, and this is part of the conversation, why I think it's so important, especially in our industry, because I think we're lacking a little bit behind. It's not collusion, but like let's foster more of a community versus a competition thing, where we're willing to have the conversations with our, community competition to say, hey, where are you at on pricing? Like, how are you doing this? Let's understand this so that we as a dirt world can start to increase some of our prices and that base rate, so that we're not, competing against the guy that paid off his machine 10 years ago is like leaking oil all over the place, and he's quoting it out at rates that are, 12 years old. Mm-hmm. Like, you're gonna have to replace that piece of machinery at some point. Yeah. So why aren't you charging the going rate for a machine? I mean,
you're getting more money anyway if everybody's there already, right?
100%.
Why would you try to race to the bottom? Like you had talked about earlier, a race to zero. That's something I'd never understand.
No. And, we went for years, our first 5.5, 6 years, we went without our own machinery. We would contract it out. So again, when I took over the business, it was my goal for the first year not to change anything, because I didn't know what I was doing. The guy before must have had a reason for what he was doing, and I didn't really change anything until about the 1 year mark. And one of the things he was doing was he was subbing out all his excavating work. So we're still on site, we're doing the assembly, we're doing the planning, we're doing all of that. We're just hiring somebody out at an hourly rate to come do the earthworks. And so when we got I think it was about June or July last year, we finally decided we're going to buy our own piece of equipment and we're going to start doing this ourselves. Now, there's definitely some pluses and minuses to it. The biggest minus being, now I'm trying to force our machine into jobs that maybe I need a bigger machine for. Now I've got payments that need to get done regularly. But overall, I'd say it's been a win for us. But yeah, you give something up when you start doing that, but you also start to, make a little bit more money based on the fact that you're just running your own machinery.
Yeah. James, what are your thoughts on buying a piece of machinery before you have the work for it, and like just saying like, this will help me go out and get the work, versus like having the work and like already stretching and then bringing in the piece. Like obviously there's no right answer, but what are your thoughts on that?
Everybody's going to have a different situation as far as what kind of work they have. I went 5.5 years without a piece of machinery, and when it got slow in the winter, I didn't stress over it. It wasn't a big deal because I didn't have machine payments. Did I pay more for the machine work and time in season? Yeah. But I mean, that got passed along to the customer at that point. So wasn't a whole lot of skin off my back. It wasn't until, we're doing regular work where I thought, well, we should probably start looking into this and go that route. I mean, it's up to each individual to look at the situation. I have always been of the mindset, I don't buy anything until I have the work for it. It makes sense to be doing that. That said, there's no guarantees that I'm going to have work a month or 2 or 3 from now. There's no guarantees in life. So once I got through my head that, even if things go to shit, I can sell the piece of machinery if I want to, and those payments stop. So as much as I look at it and go, okay, the KX57, that thing's, I think, cost me 118 grand Canadian at the time. I could probably sell it for the same amount right now, even though I've only got 500 hours on it. So is there risk? Sure. There's always risk, but it's not as risky as you think it is when you approach it from that standpoint.
Luke, I'd like to answer that too. I think it has to do a lot with like situations of where economy is at and what workload looks like. Because like 2 years ago, I mean, we were one of those companies, right? We went and bought a bunch of machinery and we got a shit ton of work and now we're growing, right? But if you were to do that in today's world, when pricing is getting a little bit, you got to give it more competitive. You really got to kind of understand the process. There's less margin for error. No way. Don't do it. Rent. Take this time to learn to when, I don't want to call it a bad time because I don't think it's a bad time, but there's less opportunity now than there was, say, 2 years ago, if that makes sense.
But at the same time, 2 years ago, you couldn't see today. You know what I'm saying?
You couldn't, but I mean, when the times were good, it's always a risk. You're always going to try to take that risk, right? But if you can see like, hey, there's an abundance of stuff here and I can do my best, put my head down, try to make a name for myself. Absolutely. I'm going to try to finance that $80,000 skid steer, and try to work like hell and make a name, so where that year later, maybe I can have a bigger fleet. Maybe I can have employees and more growth, to where now, me personally, I would take a step back. If you wanted to be in the construction trades, working for somebody right now is fantastic because you can't find enough people and people are paying really well. Or you offer those services and, and you rent that piece and, you kind of coast and you learn what you can. And then when times are good again, because they will be, and again, it's not bad, but they're not the best, take that leap, and you'll be light years ahead of where you would have been, if that makes sense.
Totally.
Yeah. It's funny too, because I think some people think being a business owner is just zero stress, like just incredible every single day. And it's like, I want to be a business owner. It's like, you can keep that, but it doesn't have to be today. It can be 2 years from now. You can build up to get to that point. And sometimes it is nice being an employee and like not having to worry about certain things. And also, you have to check yourself where you're at in your life as well. If you are like about to have a baby and, maybe that costs more like right away, maybe you do look at having a job for those 6 months just to make sure your family's good. And so I think there's certain things like that where it's all situational. It all depends. There's no right or wrong answer. And of course, the economy, prices, and the competition with some of these.
100%. But yeah, I don't know. Good for you, James. I don't think I could buy a business. So hearing like your story, going out and buying one, it's just very cool to understand and, learn more about that process. Yeah,
thank you. Like I said, it was quite the experience. It was a first for me, but I haven't ruled it out again for the future if it makes sense. Like I said, if there's something that we can add to our offerings, our service that makes sense for us, I mean, I'm all ears. I'm always listening and willing to entertain that, because for us, we've had a very good experience with it when all is said and done.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And James, I always think of you, there's shiny object syndrome, but there's also like diversifying your business in the industry that you're already in. So, you're not going to go buy a clothing company, but you could buy a pumping company that only, helps your business. So I definitely see that as, we do the same thing as well. It's like, how can we potentially purchase or start other businesses that accentuate our current business and our clientele? So yeah, dude, like I'm super excited for you. Really enjoyed getting to know you over the years, and excited to see, where you take this business and potentially, some other brands as well.
Thanks, man. And I really appreciate it too. I mean, it was less than a year ago when I think I first heard you on the Con Expo podcast when I started listening, and went and took a little stroll down the podcast street and started listening to you boys, and it's been an enjoyable little trip here. So,
Luke, man, I can't believe they let us on that.
Clearly, they didn't have somebody overseeing that.
They didn't do a background check.
Yeah, they did not do a background check. But no. Well, James, thank you again, man. Thanks for your time. We know you're busy, but I know a lot of people listening will be there. I think it's super cool. I know a lot of other people think it's very cool on how you started your business and got your start. And, everyone, like Luke said, is rooting for you, man. So
well, I appreciate it. Thank you very much, guys.
All right.